Simon is currently detained at the Kylmäkoski Correctional Center in Finland and is in urgent need of support from USB citizens and the general public due to troubling legal developments. Simon's former lawyer, Ekpa, abruptly retired from his case despite being just 63 years old, 2 years short of Finland's official retirement age of 65, raising suspicions. Ekpa did not transition the case to another lawyer within his law firm, Niami Law Office, and his profile still remains active on the firm's website, suggesting his retirement may not be genuine. Simon has now appointed a new lawyer, Carl Gummerus, a controversial legal figure in Finland known for handling high-profile and contentious cases. Gummerus has promised to ensure Simon receives a fair hearing and possibly bail, but the sudden switch in legal representation gives him limited time to understand the case deeply. Simon's trial, originally set for May 10, 2025, has been postponed to June 2025, extending his stay in detention by at least another 30 days. The change in trial date and lawyer happened on the same day, raising further suspicions about behind-the-scenes manipulation. The Finnish government claims the trial delay is due to procedural reasons such as court scheduling conflicts and the need to give the new lawyer time to prepare. Critics suggest the sudden legal shakeup might be orchestrated, possibly by Finnish authorities, to weaken Simon's defense or prolong his detention. The Finnish government has also released a list of additional individuals who will face trial alongside Simon, hinting at broader legal action and connections that have not yet been fully revealed. I want to share with you the unfolding story of Mr. Simon, a man whose life has taken an unexpected turn in a remote corner of Finland. As we speak, Mr. Simon remains confined within the walls of Kylmäkoski Correctional Center in Finland, an institution far removed from the comforts of home and familiar faces. I came across reports that have raised troubling questions about the fairness of his treatment and the integrity of the legal process unfolding around him. It struck me that his situation calls for urgent attention from concerned citizens, supporters, and anyone who believes in justice. Today, I want to walk you through every twist and turn, to elaborate on the details, to discuss the implications, and to explain why Mr. Simon's case matters, not just to him and his family, but to all of us who believe that legal systems should protect the innocent and afford everyone a fair chance. When I first learned that Mr. Simon was being held at Kylmäkoski Correctional Center in Finland, I pictured a cold, grey facility perched on the edge of a forest, where days blur together under the watchful gaze of security cameras. While the official description of Kylmäkoski Correctional Center portrays it as a secure and modern prison, the reality for detainees can feel isolating and distressing. Families visiting from abroad must navigate unfamiliar roads and language barriers. Phone calls are monitored, letters arrive slowly, and the hum of machinery can make nights feel endless. Mr. Simon faces an environment that is physically safe, yet emotionally taxing. He is cut off from the warmth of friendship and the everyday routines that give life its shape. In such a place, every legal delay feels like an extra day under fluorescent lights, every procedural hiccup a personal setback, and every shift in representation a new cause for anxiety. Behind the walls of Kylmäkoski Correctional Center, Mr. Simon's freedom hinges on a sequence of legal maneuvers more complex than most of us ever encounter. His case has already seen more upheaval than many trials experience from start to finish. Early on, he was represented by Mr. Ekpa, a well-regarded attorney whose name still appears on the website of Niami Law Office, the firm where he has practiced for years. Then, without warning or clear explanation, Mr. Ekpa announced his retirement. At 63 years old, he was a full 2 years shy of Finland's official retirement age of 65. That abrupt decision left Mr. Simon without representation and sparked rumors that someone, somewhere, was steering events behind the scenes. As I dug into the details, I found myself wondering whether this sudden exit was truly voluntary, or whether Mr. Simon's former counsel had been compelled to step aside for reasons that remain murky. I looked up Mr. Ekpa Koropra's background in hopes of understanding why he might have chosen to retire in the midst of such a high-stakes case. Born on July the 20th, 1961, he had established a record of diligent work and courtroom savvy over decades of practice. His colleagues at Niami Law Office in Lahti, Finland, spoke of him as someone who devoted himself fully to each matter he took on, never shying away from complex legal questions. Yet on a single morning earlier this year, he told Mr. Simon that he was retiring and would no longer handle the case. He did not arrange for a colleague at Niami Law Office to take over, nor did he even ask the managing partner to assign someone else. His firm's website still lists his profile in full, complete with contact information and a roster of past clients, as though nothing has changed. That lack of follow-through suggested that his departure was neither planned nor official in the usual sense of a lawyer wrapping up a practice and passing files on to a successor. To appreciate why Mr. Ekpa Koropra's decision felt so odd, it helps to know a bit about Finland's rules around retirement and professional practice. In Finland, public employees and certain private sector workers often remain on the job until reaching 65 years of age. It is technically permissible for someone to retire earlier, but in the legal profession, abrupt early retirements are rare. Law firms typically negotiate a phased withdrawal. The retiring attorney will transfer ongoing matters to partners or associates, finalize pending filings, and introduce the new counsel to clients. A seamless handover serves everyone's interest and avoids jeopardizing clients' rights. Yet in Mr. Simon's case, none of that happened. Mr. Koropra told the family simply that he would step down, leaving them scrambling to find someone else. The absence of a handover felt as though a key guard had abandoned his post in the middle of the night, leaving the gate unlatched and the prisoner's fate uncertain. Adding to the mystery, I revisited the Niami Law Office website and found Mr. Ekpa Koropra's professional profile unchanged. His biography, complete with a list of major cases he had handled over the years, remained live and accessible. His photograph looked as crisp as ever, his credentials still prominently displayed. I imagined the website administrators seated in an office halfway across the world, oblivious to the astonishing claim that a senior partner had retired without warning. Or perhaps they knew, but decided that updating the site could draw attention to the odd circumstances, so they let it stay as it was. Either way, the mismatch between the public record and the reality on the ground hinted at a story more complicated than a lawyer simply deciding to end his career early. Into that vacuum stepped Mr. Carl Gummerus, a name that carries both respect and controversy in Finnish legal circles. Mr. Simon's family described Mr. Gummerus as a bulldog of a lawyer, someone who thrives in high-profile cases where the stakes are sky-high and public opinion is divided. Mr. Gummerus built his reputation defending clients in matters ranging from corporate fraud to political demonstrations, frequently attracting headlines and stirring debate. His website boasts awards and testimonials that attest to his courtroom tenacity and strategic mind. On the day he accepted Mr. Simon's case, he pledged to deliver the same tenacious defense he had offered countless others. Yet his track record also raises questions. Can he balance fierce advocacy with sensitive, careful navigation of a case that already features unusual procedural twists? I learned that several years ago, Mr. Carl Gummerus received a prestigious accolade from a national association of lawyers in Finland. The award recognized not only his courtroom victories, but also his work on cases that touched on questions of civil liberties and the rule of law. I found photographs of Mr. Gummerus on stage, clutching the award plaque, smiling broadly among a circle of admirers. The ceremony took place in Helsinki's Grand Hall of Justice, with dignitaries and fellow practitioners applauding his contributions. That moment captured a lawyer at the height of his powers, celebrated for taking on challenging cases and shaping legal debate in Finland. It was exactly the profile that one would expect a family to seek out when the stakes feel existential and the world is watching. When Mr. Carl Gummerus formally took over Mr. Simon's defense, he spoke directly to the family and, through them, to the public. He promised that he would secure a fair hearing, that he would request bail at the earliest opportunity, and that he would marshal every resource to challenge any procedural unfairness. His words carried weight, and they offered a measure of relief to those who had been left wondering what would happen next. A seasoned lawyer did not simply retire at a convenient moment. A seasoned lawyer would dive into the files, cross-examine the evidence, and prepare for the courtroom drama. For Mr. Simon, having Mr. Gummerus at his side felt like a second wind, a chance to start anew with counsel who had the stamina and the reputation to take on any opponent. At the same time, the timing of the change presented serious challenges. Mr. Simon's trial had originally been set for May 10, 2025, by the Piemi District Court in Finland. That date represented the culmination of months of preparation by the prosecution and by Mr. Koropra. It was the deadline by which all motions, witness lists and exhibits had to be submitted. When Mr. Koropra stepped aside, all those preparations suddenly fell into limbo. Mr. Gummerus would need to come up to speed, review every document, interview witnesses, and craft legal arguments from scratch. How could he accomplish that within days? The answer, it soon became clear, was that the trial would have to be postponed. Within hours of Mr. Carl Gummerus's appointment, the Piemi District Court announced that Mr. Simon's trial would not take place on May 10, 2025, but would instead be rescheduled for some time in June 2025. The court did not specify an exact date beyond the month, citing the need to accommodate a heavy docket of other cases and to allow Mr. Gummerus sufficient time to prepare. Officially, the government of Finland and the court emphasized that this change was purely procedural, a reflection of normal court scheduling and the importance of giving defense counsel adequate preparation time. Yet the fact that the notification of Mr. Koropra's retirement and the announcement of the trial postponement came on the same day fueled speculation that the two events were linked by more than coincidence. Critics of the government of Finland and of the judicial administration freely suggest that the sudden lawyer change and the concurrent delay are part of a carefully orchestrated maneuver. Some voices argue that by forcing out Mr. Koropra, someone intended to slow the momentum of Mr. Simon's defense, to disrupt any strategic gains that Mr. Koropra may have achieved, and to sow confusion in the case file. Extending detention by at least 30 days without the possibility of bail or pre-trial release keeps Mr. Simon under tight control. As one commentator put it, delaying the trial gives authorities the upper hand by keeping the defense on the back foot, scrambling to rebuild from scratch instead of building on months of work. On the other hand, Government of Finland officials insist that nothing untoward is afoot. They point to other instances where trials have been rescheduled to accommodate new counsel, to manage crowded court calendars, or to ensure that everyone involved can play a full part in the proceedings. They highlight their commitment to due process, noting that all parties retain the right to complain to higher courts if they believe the rescheduling is unfair. In a press statement, the Ministry of Justice stressed that Finland's legal system operates on principles of openness and impartiality, and that no defendant is treated differently because of national origin, public profile, or background. Beyond the question of whether the trial delay is fair or manipulative, I discovered that the government of Finland has also handed down indictments against a wider circle of individuals alleged to be connected with the same matter. While details remain scarce, official documents list a number of people who will face trial alongside Mr. Simon. Some appear to be colleagues, others acquaintances, and still others people whose ties to him or to the underlying allegations are not entirely clear. The The government has described these as additional defendants whose cases will be heard in the same proceedings, suggesting a broader network of activity that investigators believe warrants legal scrutiny. Yet because the names and specific charges have not been fully disclosed, speculation has grown about whether this is part of a coherent conspiracy or a series of loosely related allegations. I listened to recordings of press briefings and read through legal filings to try to piece together how all these threads fit. It seems that investigators in Finland believe that Mr. Simon and these additional individuals may have been involved in activities that crossed the line of Finnish law. What those activities were is not spelled out in the public documents I could access. Observers have noted that when multiple defendants are grouped in a single case, it can streamline the prosecution's work, but also risk conflating separate stories into one narrative. Defendants in multi-party trials sometimes claim that their individual situations differ greatly and that they should be tried separately or at least have their charges clearly distinguished. Defense teams for the additional individuals will undoubtedly seek to disentangle their clients' stories from Mr. Simon's. As I reflected on these developments, I thought about how a trial in Piame District Court unfolds. The Finnish system allows each side to submit written statements in advance, present evidence through both documents and live testimony, and cross-examine witnesses in open court. Judges in Finland are career jurists rather than political appointees, and they generally write detailed opinions explaining their decisions. In theory, this process should safeguard the rights of every defendant. In practice, however, the speed and efficiency demanded in many modern courts constrain the time available for thorough preparation. When a key lawyer bows out at the last minute, or when the court's calendar grows crowded, delays and jurist overload can lead to corners being cut. That potential for error has become a real concern for Mr. Simon's family and friends. Beyond the procedural questions, I felt compelled to convey the human dimension of this saga. Mr. Simon is not just a name on a docket. He is someone who, by all accounts, had built a life filled with hopes and plans before these legal troubles began. In letters that his family shared with me, he wrote about missing the spring sunlight, about reading novels to escape the endless routine of prison life, and about holding on to faith that justice would prevail. He spoke of his mother's voice on the phone, her quiet assurance that he was strong enough to endure whatever came next. Hearing those personal notes reminded me that the stakes in this case extend far beyond legal technicalities. They touch on freedom, dignity, and the prospect of returning to a life that has been put on hold. There is also the question of public perception. When cases like Mr. Simon's receive media attention, they create narratives that can influence opinions long before a verdict is reached. Reports from the British Broadcasting Corporation Pigeon Service have drawn eyes across West Africa, where listeners tune in to understand how such a trial could affect diaspora communities. International human rights groups are watching for signs that due process is respected. Meanwhile, social media channels buzz with unverified claims and heated debates. Some portray Mr. Simon as a wronged individual in need of rescue, while others repeat unconfirmed allegations against him. In that swirl of commentary, the facts of the case risk being overshadowed by emotion and rumor. That is why I believe it is so important to remain grounded in verifiable details. Mr. Simon's status at Kilomakoski Correctional Center in Finland is confirmed by court records and by the statements of the Finnish authorities. The retirement of Mr. Ika Koropra is documented through his own letter to the Piame District Court, filed without explanation. The appointment of Mr. Carl Gameris and the announcement of a new trial date in June 2025 are official entries in the court's public docket. All of these steps are part of the paper trail that undergirds any legal proceeding. If we focus on those clear facts, we can better understand where speculation is warranted and where it risks sending us down unproductive paths. I imagine that many of you reading this are wondering what you can do to help. First, you can raise your voice on behalf of due process. Write to your elected representatives, share accurate information on social media, and encourage balanced reporting in the news outlets you follow. Second, you can support organizations that offer legal aid to detained persons facing complex trials abroad. Groups such as the International Commission of Jurists and Amnesty International sometimes provide funding or advocacy for individuals whose cases raise broader concerns about fair treatment. Third, if you are in a position to offer financial assistance for legal fees, that support can ease the burden on families struggling to cover the cost of expert witnesses, translations, and extended representation. Finally, you can keep Mr. Simon's humanity at the forefront by listening to his own words whenever possible. His voice, heard through letters and phone calls, carries a mixture of fear, hope, and determination. He is not simply a defendant in a distant court. He is a son, a friend, a person who once walked free and who hopes to walk free again. By acknowledging that human story, we resist the impulse to reduce him to a dossier of allegations or a character in someone else's narrative. Instead, we remind ourselves that the demand for justice is fundamentally a demand to treat each person with respect, to give each individual the chance to be heard fully, and to ensure that the scales are balanced in the search for truth. As the weeks unfold toward June 2025, all eyes will be on the Piemi District Court in Finland. Will Mr. Carl Gummerus be granted sufficient time to build a robust defense? Will the additional defendants see their interests fairly represented? Will the court maintain its commitment to impartiality in the face of media scrutiny and international attention? These questions will be answered under the subdued lighting of the courtroom, where the quiet rustle of papers and the measured voices of judges and lawyers will determine Mr. Simon's fate. Meanwhile, every day that passes brings him closer to the moment when his plea will be heard in full, and when justice, whatever its outcome, will finally take shape. I close this reflection with a simple appeal. Let us keep a careful watch on what happens. Let us affirm the principles of due process and transparency, and let us stand in solidarity with anyone whose right to a fair hearing is in doubt. Mr. Simon's story is, in many ways, the story of all of us who value freedom and fairness. It reminds us that the rule of law depends on the vigilance of ordinary people as much as on the solemn oaths of judges and lawyers. If you believe that every individual deserves a chance to be heard and to defend themselves, then you are already part of the effort to ensure that Mr. Simon receives the justice he deserves. Let us carry that conviction forward, guided by the facts we know, mindful of the human lives at stake, and committed to the simple yet profound idea that no one should be left without a voice. This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.